How to prevent the progression and even reverse cognitive decline, dementia, and Alzheimer's. Hey, Sophie here, and today I am really excited to cover and shed light on this groundbreaking new trial, this new study that has just been published as of June 2024. This trial was conducted by the father of lifestyle medicine, Dr. Dean Ornish himself. It is a randomized controlled trial, which is the gold standard of scientific trials. It has just been published in one of the most prestigious journals pertaining to Alzheimer's research. And this study shows how making lifestyle changes by way of an intensive lifestyle intervention can significantly slow the progression and even in some cases reverse the symptoms of the devastating illness that we now know as Alzheimer's and also dementia. So this is very close to my heart because my father actually died of Alzheimer's. And if you've ever had a family member or anybody that you know who's had dementia or Alzheimer's, it is absolutely devastating. It devastates everybody in and around the family. It is one of the most devastating diseases and it is on the rise. So that is why this study is so incredibly important. A huge percentage of Americans will now get Alzheimer's. It is the fifth leading cause of death in the United States. And so whatever we can do to prevent it, we need to be really focused in on that. Now, billions of dollars have been spent on creating drugs and Alzheimer's research. And to date, only 2 drugs have been brought to market. One of those drugs has been removed from the market, and the other one has such concerning and in many cases devastating side effects that for most it's just not an option. So what are we left with? Well, you might go, well, we're left with nothing. There are no options if somebody has dementia or Alzheimer's until now. And now we know that there is ostensibly a solution. And in Dr. Dean Ornish's words himself, he said, he is cautiously optimistic. Like any good scientist and doctor, he is cautiously optimistic. But being cautiously optimistic about something where there was literally no other solution is an amazing thing. So let me just quickly cover this trial, unpack this trial for you, and I am linking to it underneath in the description of the video so you can read the trial for yourself. But as I said earlier, it's a randomized controlled trial, which is the gold standard of trials, of any kind of trial. We always look to a randomized controlled trial. And so there were 51 participants, all over the age of 49, all with early stage dementia, men and women. Now, half of the group were assigned to this intensive lifestyle intervention, and I'll go over in a moment exactly what that was, what it comprised of. And the other half, the control group, were not. For them, it was just like carry on, business as usual. Now, I will also add that the group that were assigned to the intensive lifestyle intervention were not taking any drugs. There were no medications or drugs involved. Okay, so those are the 2 groups. So they were put on this intervention, of 50% of them were put on this intensive lifestyle intervention for 20 weeks. And at the end of 20 weeks, there were statistically significant outcomes and improvements in terms of improvement of cognitive improvement, basically, and in some cases very, very significant. And I'll give you some examples, some real world examples in a second. And in the control group, where there were no lifestyle changes, there was no improvement. And in most cases, there were worsening of symptoms. So that's it. So that's pretty groundbreaking news. So let me give you some examples before I get into what these changes, what this intensive lifestyle intervention comprised of. So a couple of examples, and I just love these stories because it just, I don't know, it's so hopeful, and it's so beautiful to see people who can actually live again. They get their life back again, with cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's. You lose everything, absolutely everything. And your family and loved ones lose you. So there was one participant in the study, I think there are a few actually, but one notable, who said that she couldn't read a book, or her family said she couldn't read a book anymore because she'd read a sentence and then forget it. So she couldn't read, stop reading. So after the trial, after 20 weeks, she could read a book from cover to cover. Can you imagine that? There were two notable participants who could manage their finances again. So one was a male executive, and he had been very used to it. It was his identity. He managed finances every single day. He stopped being able to do that after the trial. He could manage his finances again. There was a woman who could manage the family finances, couldn't. And then after the trial, she could get back to doing that. And both of these participants said it was their identity. Their identity as a human being was somebody who could do these things. And slowly that identity was slipping away until it was completely gone. There were musicians who could remember and go back to being able to play because they could remember the notes and the songs. There were, family members who everybody said, there was one woman who was the matriarch of the family, as many women are. She was the glue that held the family together. And suddenly she was back. She was holding the family back together again. So many of these stories that came out of this trial are just so beautiful. These real world examples of people like you and I, who have families like you and I, who got their life back again. They got their brain back again. They got their cognition back again. They got their life back again. And again, if you've ever been around somebody who's got Alzheimer's, it's devastating. My father was an absolutely brilliant man. He was a scientist. He's a chemist. He was part of the group that even discovered the Krebs cycle. He had a very, very sharp and brilliant mind. And this was a man who, by the way, I was remembering in the early 70s, before anybody even had a computer. He had one of the first Apple computers, and he predicted that, I remember him predicting that there would be this thing called the World Wide Web. I remember him saying, and he used to tell everybody, and he said it will change the reality as we know it. And everybody was like, oh, yeah, that's ridiculous. That's just like science fiction. So anyway, he was a brilliant man, but he got to the point where I remember sitting with him, and there was food put in front of him, and he said, how do I eat? So those of you who have looked after somebody in that position, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So, and there was a couple in this study who they said, if only we had known, the man, the husband was in his 90s, and it was really sweet and heartbreaking and moving, their story. And he said, if only I'd known what we now know about this lifestyle 20 years ago. And it was such a wake-up call, because I want to say to you who's watching this video, this is really about prevention. And one of the things that came out of this study was the earlier you start, the better. Don't leave it until it's too late. This is what I preach morning, noon, and night to everyone I speak to. If not now, when? Because the changes that you make now are 100% going to impact who you are and how you show up and what you're able to do in your 70s, 80s, and 90s. So if there's one big thing that comes out of this study, don't wait. Make these lifestyle changes now. By the way, if you want to know a little bit more, I often say this in my videos about my philosophy to making lifestyle changes. And I really help women dial everything in who primarily are over the age of 50. Watch my free masterclass, and I'll link to it below this video. Now, before I get into these changes, speaking to women who are over 50, who are postmenopausal, which is most of the women that I speak to. And if you're a little bit younger, you're welcome. I'm telling you, if you're in your 40s or even your 30s, listen up, because you can nip this in the bud, way, way earlier. And I know I have a lot of lovely men in my community too, but primarily just what I'm about to say really pertains to women who are postmenopausal, because it's very important for you ladies. Listen up. This is so important, because after the age of 50, you are now at higher risk for heart disease. You are at higher risk for basically all chronic disease. The number one killer of women who are over 50 is heart disease, cardiovascular disease, which is actually quite closely linked to Alzheimer's as well. Now we're discovering how all of these chronic diseases are all linked together. One of the things that I help women to do over 50 is to banish belly fat, to get rid of all visceral fat. And visceral fat is the dangerous kind of fat. It's metabolically active. It is inflammatory. And given the fact that inflammation underpins all these chronic diseases, everything is interrelated. And so it's very interesting to me that the specific lifestyle intervention changes that Dr. Ornish puts forth are very, very similar to the lifestyle changes that I really help women dial in a very significant and quite intensive way, so that they can get these amazing results of, wow, my body, often it's cosmetic for some women, my body looks better, I'm glowing, I feel great, I have energy, I feel strong. But also understand that these lifestyle changes are very, very much about preventing all chronic disease as well. So it's sort of exciting that you can see that it all comes together. It's not just this one thing over here, like, oh, we've got to try and prevent Alzheimer's over here, or heart disease over here, or osteoporosis over there, or get rid of my belly fat over here. It's everything. It all comes together with these lifestyle changes. So what did this comprise of? The intensive lifestyle intervention, because it was an intervention. Dr. Ornish came in, and with 50% of these participants, he said, okay, this is what you're going to do. This is how we are going to dial this in. It's not just, oh, we're going to make a couple of little minor baby step changes here, which everybody wants to hear, right? Sorry, as usual, there's some plane or helicopter when I'm sitting outside. But, we all want to hear that. Right? We all want to hear that. I always say that we want to hear good news about our bad habits, or we want to hear that we only have to make a couple of little tiny changes. But as I often say to my clients, if you want significant results, then you're going to need to make significant changes, and I will absolutely help you to do that. So in terms of this study, it was called an intervention. So these participants before had been living a kind of pretty normal life, nothing too unhealthy, business as usual. Many of them eating a standard American diet, or a healthy version, I should say. We're not talking complete junk food, processed food, just a sort of normal, omnivorous diet with a little bit of exercise here and there, just kind of, just sort of business life as usual. And then they were brought into this trial, and it was like, here we go. Buckle up. Are you ready? So the 4 things, and these are the 4 broad pillars of this study that I'm going to go over. And underneath each of these 4 umbrellas, there's a lot of nuance and a lot of detail, which I'm not going to get into in this video. I'm just going to go over the pillars. Number 1 was exclusively a whole food, minimally processed, plant-based diet. That was it. End of story. We're going to have you dial this in. We're going to show you how to dial this in. This is going to be a very big part of you getting the outcome that you want. That was number 1. Number 2 was moderate cardio exercise and strength training. Moderate. And so I get into that, and I have many different videos and whatnot on actually what that needs to look like, particularly for a woman over 50. So that's what this study was, moderate. But it was every day, and then strength training, certain times a week. But it was very, very consistent. I'm talking about these changes, and certainly in this trial, it was every day. And number 3 was stress management. Now, stress management is a very broad term, isn't it? We're like, oh, I almost don't like that term, stress management, because it's like, oh, stress management. Hi, sunshine. There's sunshine right there. Hey, sunny bun. Who's deaf? She can't hear me, by the way. But stress management, underneath stress management, the different pieces under stress management were, in terms of this study, breathing, stretching, meditation, and visualization. All I believe to be absolutely critical tools. And knowing what those tools are specifically and how to use them, I believe is absolutely critical. And number 4 was support and community. Again, I believe that all 4 of these pillars are absolutely critical, and they all work together, because this social support and community, if you think about it, you know, the participants were taken away and were invited to make these huge changes within the context of a trial. And when they're on a trial, they're going to be doing it. They're getting a lot of support. They're being shown how to do it, shown how to dial in every little piece of this. But then if they were to go back into their environment, in their community, really the key is this needs to be a forever lifestyle, right? And for it to be a forever lifestyle, I believe, in my experience of doing this for 20 years, it's absolutely necessary to have a very supportive community where everybody is on exactly the same page. You really need to have that, because otherwise you go back into your community and the modern day environment that we live in, right, where sort of an unhealthy way of living and eating and moving and living is normal. It's normalized. And so we really need to be in a community where you have everybody on the same page and going from strength to strength, and having also that social connection, that social health is also a very, very important part. It's the support, it's the connection, it's the social connection. It is absolutely critical in being able to maintain a beautiful lifestyle that, to all intents and purposes for the outside world, can seem, you know, a little extreme. Oh, you don't to do all that. Oh, that's too much. Oh, why don't you, and that's why you need to have your community. So that's it. That's what I wanted to cover today. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm just sitting here speaking so passionately from my heart, because I think in this day and age right now, and being on YouTube and podcasts and everything, there's so many nutrition wars, aren't there? There's just all, hey, he says this and she says that, and I'm on this bandwagon and this one's on this bandwagon. And ultimately, you know, we can sit, and it's very tribal, because food particularly is very tribal, and tribal is protecting the way that I'm doing things. And, you know, I get that, but this tribalism and these nutrition wars give rise to just even more confusion, I think, for the everyday person. And that's why I really like to bring these groundbreaking studies to light that pulls back and really looks at the sort of bigger picture of who you want to be and how you want to be. And there's a lot that you can do that's within your control in your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And what you do today is going to be who you are going to be in your 80s and your 90s, and hopefully beyond. So don't delay. If not now, when? I'll see you next time.